Hi, everybody. I'm always so awkward at the beginning.
People are coming in.
They're coming in. Hi.
Yeah.
Let's see. Look at all these great people. Can you all hear us? If you want to put in the chat box, maybe a deep, dark secret you never told anybody. Something that only we can know. I'm gonna put the chat box so everybody can see what everybody's writing. But if it gets weird,
Shut that down.
we'll shut that down. Wait, can somebody put in the chat box that you can hear us?
I can hear us.
You could. Alexis L. Jones, type something in the chat box. Why is nobody? Oh, wait.
They're saying chat is disabled.
Chat is
Is it?
disabled.
Oh, hang on a second.
Oh, wait. Okay. Now it should work. Try it.
Okay, let's see.
There we go. Yay.
Nice.
I was like, everybody's so shy today. Okay, now here we go.
All
Okay,
right.
now, yes, everybody's hi. Cool. So good to see everybody. Awesome. So we're gonna jump right in. And if you know me, you know I'm serious today if I'm not wearing a tank top. I'm in serious t-shirt mode.
Partial sleeves.
Partial sleeves, yeah. So we're excited to have you all. So we're going to start in a little bit. We have Tom from Stage 13 and Mitchell from Gramercy Park joining us today. They're two of our judges in the JumpStart competition. They're so amazing. They're literally two of the most gracious execs that are really open to fresh voices. Like a lot of execs talk the talk, but they walk the walk. Is that how you say it? That's right.
Yep. You got it.
So I'm so excited to have them. Just quickly, this is Emily Locke. She joined us relatively recently. Emily, want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi. Yeah. I started at Roadmap in last October. So we're coming up on a year soon. And I am the director of competitions. So I do a lot of reading of all of your scripts. I see some names I recognize in the chat. So it's good to see everybody. And I'm so excited to talk to you all today.
Awesome. And then I'm sure some of you already know Aadip Desai, but Aadip.
Hello. I started in November. So, we're almost the same, have almost the same anniversary. And I'm the director of brand marketing and brand management and marketing. It's such a long title. And then I'm also a TV writer and I interview people a lot. So that's my deal. Including
Olivia Colman.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I've talked to her and stuff.
That is so crazy. Oh my God, I'm obsessed. So we are going to start. So I was do a quick intro, a little change about the JumpStart, as some of you saw from the emails or the announcements. We're doing something a little differently that I think we're going to carry through with basically all our competitions. Is that moving forward, we're going to, and Emily's been so great at this, going through the scripts that scored highly through the JumpStart competition before we even do like the first round of placements, and then send me their emails, whatever they submitted, their bios. I'll reach out to I am and have been reaching out to writers. If you didn't get an email from me yet, don't worry. We're still getting through it. And we're going to start marketing writers now. I personally think the competition circuit is getting a little out of hand. So I feel like we felt that we wanted to change it up a little bit and give more writers a chance. And just in the past couple of weeks, we've gotten writers script requests at like Fuzzy Door, APA, Franklin Entertainment, Amy Poehler's company. And that's what we do at Roadmap. We're just always trying to help as many writers get out there as possible. So whether you win or even if you don't even place, it doesn't really matter anymore. Like we're trying to like kind of dismantle that kind of thought process a little bit. So giving more writers a chance than ever before. So really excited about that. So I'm gonna hand it over to Emily and Aadip, and we are going to get started. I'll do the intros. First, we have Mitchell from Gramercy Park. So Mitchell, I'm gonna bring you in and promote you to panelist. And we have Tom from Stage 13.
Hello, hello.
Hey, how are you?
Hello.
I am doing splendidly. Hope you guys are doing well too.
Yeah, we're doing
We're good.
good.
How's it going?
Hi, Tom.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to leave Tom and Mitchell in the capable hands of Aadip and Emily, and have a great Q&A, everybody.
Awesome.
Sounds
Thank you,
good.
sir. All right. Hi, guys. Nice to meet you. Thanks for helping us out today. Emily, do you want to, I'll do my warnings and then you want to kick it off?
Yeah.
All
let's do
right.
it.
So, so the first thing is like, everyone know, like, don't try to pitch in the chat. Don't try to get contact information from people. Like, we'll handle that kind of stuff later. If you have any questions, put them in the Q&A box. Don't be shy about asking questions. We'll try to get to as many as possible. We did our intros, but I would love to have Mitchell and Tom do a little quick intro of themselves since it's meet the judges. Tom, would you like to start?
Sure. I am Tom Ishizuka. I am a development exec over at Stage 13. We're a artist-friendly kind of studio slash pod underneath Warner Brothers Discovery and Warner Brothers Television, specifically focused on working with emerging and up-and-coming talent, as well as underrepresented talent and voices from historically excluded communities. And I am based in New York. I'm based in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And I pretty much worked in New York in development and producing for most of my career across a number of companies, across indie film, across theater, both commercial and off-Broadway. And I'll keep it short, really. I'm here, and I'm so thankful for this program here at Roadmap, because I feel like we really align as a company here at Stage 13 with what you all do, which is really look for fresh, unique voices and offer them opportunities that the historical gatekeepers of film and television usually gatekeep people away from. So excited to meet some folks, and that's me. So Mitchell, why don't you totally upstage me now?
How can I beat that? Well, yeah, my name is Mitchell. Hi, everybody. I am a Los Angeles local. I currently work at Gramercy Park, which is a management company, and we work with writers, directors, producers, comedians, whoever is a storyteller with a vision and a voice. And I've been doing that for a little bit over a year. Before that, I worked at Marvel, and before that, I worked at WME, William Morris Endeavor. I am a graduate of UCLA, and I am left-handed.
Whoa, that's get out of here right now. That's awesome. Like, so were you at Marvel on the studio side or on the TV side?
I was on the TV side, and then I got merged, and I was on the studio side too. So
nice. So you survived the takeover then.
for a few months. For a few months, and then got Thanos snapped. But yeah.
Brutal. There's so much of that happening.
We love a corporation.
Oh, brutal. And we can talk about that too, because Tom, I'm sure you guys are feeling that. So you have a WB Discovery, whatever their company's name is. So let's start with let's ask Emily really quickly, because I just want everyone to understand how the competition works. So I was going to ask Emily about what's the process, what gets submitted and what gets looked at, and then in terms of what Mitchell and Tom get to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. So writers submit their scripts to Roadmap, and then I distribute all of those scripts to our team of professional readers, and they rank the scripts based on a couple different categories: the strength of their premise, dialogue, characterization, story, structure, the writer's voice and style. And then the submissions often get read multiple different times, especially if they're being considered as promising entries for being quarterfinalists, semifinalists, finalists. And so my team will make those decisions. And then the judges will receive the final top 10 scripts, so 5 features and 5 pilots. And they'll read them, rank them, and then decide our winners. But like Joey said, it's, other competitions where the judges only see the top 10. We're already starting to market the other scripts that, before we even do the contest placements, to really help every strong writer get exec eyes on their material.
So when you say market, you mean sending the script to representation, executives to see if they spark to the material and that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then how many entrants do you get typically?
We
Or
typically
we,
get around 1,000.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah,
That's
it's
1,000
competitive.
that she has to manage, and that's just one of the things that she does. So it's a lot. And then so that's good. That gives us a nice overview. And then Emily, I know you had some questions for these guys about their process.
So one of my questions for you guys is, what do you look for when you're reading over these scripts? What are like the non-negotiables, the must-haves in a strong script? Tom, do you want to go first?
I think Mitchell should go first because I led the first one, so I'll follow you.
It's only fair. It's only fair. Voice is going to be paramount, I think, in this very oversaturated industry that we work in. A lot of people have a lot of ideas, and a great concept is always really helpful. But a lot of people can come up with really cool concepts. It's about that individuality and that specificity and that undeniability in your voice and your vision that makes it that you are the only person that can write this script. And that even if it's a period piece about the first Roman emperor, that through reading that script, that person can still learn a little bit more about you as a writer and how you write in your voice and personality.
Love that. That's a great answer.
Very well said. And yeah, I mean, I think I start out, I'm a cynic, so I usually just start out with the understanding that everything has already been done before. So it's not necessarily always about like, what is the absolute most original thing I could possibly come up with? Let's do this, but make this character that, this character that. You can always, I think, smell whether it's authenticity or something that feels true to the writer when it actually is, when it feels cultivated, when it feels, things that are outside of the writer's world. There are often a lot of things that a writer isn't considering. But, when it's close to home, when it's well-researched, or whether it's, an exploration into the world that, a true exploration into the world, I think you can usually tell. And, adding to what Mitchell said, I think a hooky concept and a hooky premise can really get your foot in the door. That sparkly log line is obviously important, but character over everything. That's really the thing that's gonna, propel you from episode to episode and really give the legs of the show. And so I'm always accused of being, a little too detail oriented when it comes to development with writers, but you always want to be able to answer every single question. If you really believe in whatever you're writing, I'm not saying you should be able to project out into season 4, season 5, but it's really important to understand every single character's motivation and how that factors in, because you have to be really economical, especially with a TV script. If you're only working with 30 pages or 60 pages, every single line, every single page has got to count in terms of introducing your audience to the world. So, really making sure you're economical, but really specific. That really comes about when you understand your characters inside and out.
Amazing. Thank you. Aadip, do you have a question you want to throw out there?
Yeah, let's see. In terms of what you may not see this at the level when you get the scripts, but in general, since you guys must read a shit ton of scripts, what are sort of the common mistakes, since we do have a lot of newer writers, what are common mistakes you guys see in scripts that, like, okay, these 5 things you just like don't do anymore? I know what they are, but I want to hear what you guys have to say about that.
I think I saw something in the Q&A. I'm trying to keep it as, applicable across TV and features as much as possible, because I think I do read a pretty equal amount of both. But
right.
I think kind of a smaller thing is not understanding your genre and how it can work for you and how it can work against you. You can always choose to combine certain genre elements and certain, you can subvert certain genre expectations from a certain reader, but it always needs to come from a firm understanding of what works and what doesn't. And, genre isn't just a thing that will, kind of restrict you or confine you in a box. It could be something that really works for you in that, some of your comps, for example, or things that, these touch points that the people reading your script will have, you could always work off of that base knowledge, and then you could choose to subvert that and be like, oh, this is the X-Files, but these elements are very different. And suddenly you have kind of something really working for you. It's like, oh, I'm familiar with the X-Files. I know everything that show does and what the engine and the episode to episode thing is, but I understand now that it's trying to subvert it in that direction. And so it's kind of a little nebulous, but understanding genre and how a horror script is very different from a family drama and kind of the beats that go along with that. I'm not really like a save the cat purist. I think there are a lot of ways that you can subvert your structure and things of that nature, but it always should come from an understanding of how that structure does work for you and why you're intentionally using it or intentionally subverting it.
And the like people get all kind of like, oh, if it's a horror, I have to have this on this page and the jump scare here, and it's really more about taking, like you're saying, taking those touch points, like these characteristics of the genre, and subverting them, making them fresh. So it's not something that we would expect. I think a lot of people kind of get caught up, like they want to do the whole new thing. They want everything to be really unique, and it's like it's not really about that, right? It's about the vision and the storytelling. Not like, look at this gimmick that I threw in here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great answer, by the way, Tom.
Love the cheerleading going on.
I know, that's great.
We gotta root for each other. I would say my answer, and I hope this doesn't come off as close-minded. I would say that, and the more emerging you are, the more important this is. Tom is the exception because he's a wonderful exec, but sometimes there are executives that see a script as homework, and they are like, great, another thing that I have to read. And so there's already that negative association in their head that they just want to finish. They want to prove that this is bad so they can put this away after that first 10 or 15 or 20 pages versus finishing the whole thing. Which is why I would say is the more emerging you are, the more important it is to not have a slow start to your script. And that doesn't mean explosions and crazy gunfights and, multiple sex scenes in the first 5 pages. Does not have to be that. It could be something through the dialogue. It could be something through just the subtext, but making sure that that energy and that noise is coming in from the beginning to make it as hard as possible for the person on the other side to put that script down, literally or digitally. It's going to be very, very, very crucial that at the end of those 10 pages, they're like, all right, fine, I guess I'll read the next 10. Okay, these are actually pretty good. I'll read the next 10. And oh, wait, actually, I'm done. This is pretty good. Like, that's what you want. You want to keep proving to them that they got to keep reading until they finish and decide that you're worth taking a chance on.
Because that's kind of the job, right? Yeah.
But yeah, that's mine.
That's kind of the job, right? It's like keep them turning the page. Keep you guys turning the page.
Which is what a lot of buyers are going to be looking for too, especially because, it's less about kind of turning the TV off, and it's more just like you're on Netflix, like, okay, the first 5 minutes or whatever, let me click on something else. Like, how do you keep their engagement? And that's what a lot of these buyers are going to be looking for, just reeling them in as quick as possible. Again, does not have to be very big, crazy plot. Could be something else, but just something that, feels attention grabbing.
You guys find
go
ahead.
To really add to that, I think that's an incredible answer, and probably the most oversent YouTube link I send around to all the writers I work with is, it's very basic, it's not very sophisticated, but it's the cold open to Breaking Bad.
Right.
And it's just what those first 3 minutes or 2.5 minutes do You have this middle-aged Bryan Cranston dad in his underwear. He's got two maybe potential corpses. He's wearing a gas mask. He's speeding through this southwestern desert in an RV. Things are crazy. He crashes into a ditch. He's feverishly recording videos to his family saying that he might die. We hear cops in the distance. He walks out onto the desert road. You see the world, you see the landscape, you see the character, and he points a gun down the road, and then it's the title. And it's just, whether you're writing your pilot, whether you're preparing your oral pitch, whether you're doing anything in terms of promoting your project, just that energy of everything you need to know is condensed in those 2 minutes, and you want to keep playing, you want to keep reading. Like, that's the energy you should always have in your opening pages, in your opening 5 minutes of your pitch, in your whatever that you're doing when you're projecting your project. So, sorry, I'm just adding on to what you already said, Mitchell, but I just wanted to tack that on.
No, hey, we're partners here. Thank you. Yeah. You made it even better. So
this is not typical. Okay, executives are no, I'm just kidding. We work with great executives, so for us, it is kind of typical to have this kind of energy. I have a follow-up to that because the Breaking Bad intro kind of created this other problem with writing, where everyone's like, I gotta have the big boom in the beginning, and then I'm gonna flash, we're gonna cut back to like present day or whatever, and it's like everyone started doing that. And are you guys seeing, like, is there an alternative to that we can do that works in terms of, like, the big, like Mitchell said, the big explosion, and then we kind of get into the story, other ways of sort of getting into it?
I mean, again, it comes to genre, right? What is that equivalent for whatever your story is? I don't think personally I'm developing any TV or feature projects that involve, guns and meth labs. That's not what I'm working on right now. And frankly, I think I tend to gravitate towards, more grounded dramas personally in terms of my own slate. And it's really all about understanding, what do we care about with each genre, each world, each universe? What are the main drawing points? And that could be just a very fleeting moment. The train station rom-com moment can be that equivalent. Whatever that is calibrated towards your particular story, your particular universe. Because no matter what you're writing, you should know why it's interesting. You should know why people should give a damn about this potential story, give a damn about what the characters are doing, and invest. And it's asking, I think that cold open mentality is really just a great example of just, it should embody why you should care about the show in the first place. And however you can kind of deliver that, whether it's action packed and involves guns and the cops and speeding cross highways, or maybe it's just a very intimate moment between like an Asian couple that is like really reckoning with their love and death, and like there's not a single line of dialogue spoken, but you could tell in like the looks in their eyes what that moment means to them. It could really be anything, I think.
Yeah, to add to that incredible answer, I would like to like, it's so cold open, teaser, whatever you want to call it. I like to use teaser because I think that you are teasing the show, right? And so what is the best version of your show, and how can that be the teaser? How can you finish that cold open or whatever and be like, oh my goodness, this is such a cool taste of what the show or the film or whatever is going to be? What is going to hook them in, if not narratively through something crazy like, a dude in his underwear pointing a pistol at the road?
Right.
Maybe it can be something else, right? Maybe it can be a wild conversation or a debate about something that you've never really seen before, or like a really interesting party scene, or just something where you have a reason to suddenly, or something very subversive too, because I think subversion can be really interesting in a cold open or a teaser because you have no context, right? You don't know what the rest of the film, the rest of the show is going to be. So whatever really sets the mood in a really cool way, and and kind of teases all of the fun components that you as a writer would want the audience to experience for the rest of that project. How can you fit all those emotions into those 3, 5, however many pages you're going to use as that teaser or cold open?
Definitely. And this is really great advice for competitions too. Like, readers are inundated, judges are inundated. So you want to really impress them in the first couple of pages, and you want to make them, like Mitchell was saying, you want to make them go, oh, I'm excited to read this. I want to dive in and I want to keep turning the page. So whether that's like your character introductions right off the bat, or making sure your voice really stands out as your own, this is really important for competitions.
And Emily, what some people are asking, you know, like, what do you think about politically incorrect material? Which I'm like, okay, what year is that from? But what are things that turn you off immediately? Like, it's kind of, it could be genre, it could be kind of content, it could be the way the content is handled. What are little sort of the cringy things that people should avoid?
I think with regard to political correctness, it's okay to poke fun at the idea of being extremely PC, but you should be being respectful to all types of people at all times. You never know who's going to be reading your script. And beyond that, you should just treat all people, all characters with respect. So if you're using like very gratuitous, politically incorrect imagery or language, I would just be really careful with that kind of content. And I would say just maybe steer clear would be my take.
We see some weird shit. I'm just gonna like say that, and everybody hears about it. You know what I mean? It's like whenever there's a weird script with a weird thing in it, it's like, oh, dude, check this out. So don't be one of those people who's gonna get the oh, dude, because we've seen some wild stuff, stuff that you can't even imagine. You're like, your brain, something's up with this person's brain that they should not be able to create this situation.
The question you should be asking yourself is, do you want people saying, oh, this really shocked me in a way that might not be positive, or, oh, this really surprised me, this writing is so strong, this dialogue moves so fast, this is very quick-witted. So
right,
what do you want people to focus on when they're reading your work?
Yeah, instead of like, I need a garbage can to throw up in, because that's just so let's see, Emily, do you want to ask the guys about some of the sort of the business stuff too?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. If there's anything that's happening right now in the industry that's particularly exciting you, I'd love to hear about anything that comes to mind.
Corporate mergers.
The most exciting thing, you know?
I would say that something that's very exciting in the industry is that it's always about proving there's an audience, right? That this will always be right. We'll always have dollar signs associated with it. But I would like to think, and maybe this is the optimist in me, that if you can prove that something is going to make money and there's a real commercial element to it, that you can really take swings. I think that for me, watching films like Everything Everywhere All at Once, Not Okay, Fire Island, like those, to me, I didn't really imagine those as films ever existing. Not Okay was especially interesting to me because it felt like a real story about the internet. On the TV side, watching season 3 of Atlanta, something that felt so anthological and kind of unlike anything I've ever seen. Again, if you can, whether, and that can be through a package, that can be through talent involved, whatever, or it can just be through something in the story, that it's not just about having to be based in trauma porn anymore, or about kind of like doing something derivative. I would like to think that execs are becoming more open-minded, are more attuned to the culture. With the rise of the internet, people are kind of more tapped into, it's like the whole Sonic thing, right? Like you can get that live feedback from an entire platform about if your character looks awful, and then you will go back and spend millions of dollars and change it and turn it into a hit franchise. And that couldn't have happened really 20, 30 years ago. So hopefully that speed of information traveling is what's allowing people to have their finger on the pulse a little bit more and be a little bit more attuned to what the culture is looking for.
Love that. Tom?
Another excellent answer by Mitchell there.
But quality answers.
I think there's two things that come about it. And I think one of them still has a long way to go, which is, you know, I always, as you know, a company and also as an individual that's always looking for opportunities to really, you know, present opportunities for, you know, historically excluded voices to be out there. I think we are on the beginning of an evolution of what I always say is that, you know, until I see characters of color queer characters, disabled characters, characters from historically excluded communities, until we get to a point where they're abundant, where they are not held to this some kind of standard where, you know, they are the pinnacle of that. They have to be this model of excellence, or else they become a lightning rod of criticism in that. You know, until we get to that point, we don't have representation that we need, I think. Until we have just messy, awful characters from underrepresented communities that can exist as messy, awful characters that obviously exist across all throughout film and TV. I think that's what we're striving for, and that's what we're beginning to see, I think, which is really encouraging, and I'm looking to really continue to push that forward and fight that good fight. But I think another thing I think is an agnosticism, or really kind of form breaking in a way that is genuinely interesting. You know, Mitchell brought up Atlanta, for example. I think it's, 4 out of the 10 episodes in the most recent season have nothing to do with our main characters, and everyone ate it up. You know, we have like the half-hour drama that's really starting to come about, whether it's the bear or normal people. You know, we have just, what is The Rehearsal? I don't know, but it's like one of my favorite shows right now. You know, like there's
where do you put it, right?
You know, and I love, like, classic TV forms. You know, when it comes down to it, my comfort TV might even be like Cheers and Golden Girls. You know, there's
nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely nothing wrong with the classic sitcom, and they still exist. Ted Lasso is a classic sitcom.
Right.
Even like What We Do in the Shadows is a classic sitcom in a different world.
Right.
But there are people and shows and networks, you know, that are taking risks in the right ways, whether it is in time length and form, or just kind of concepts that feel interesting to me. That I think there's a reason the landscape of TV looks very different than it did 20 years ago. And I think now, compared to 2002, is a greater difference than 2002 to 1982.
What do you see on the page that's going to signal to you as a reader that, like, oh, this is a fresh take, or this is in a kind of a subversive version of this form? Or is that something that's like a later conversation when you get into development and going to series and that kind of thing? Because you wouldn't know necessarily if you read the Atlanta pilot that that's where it was going to go.
Of course. Well, I think that's a hard question there.
I know. It's really just like, because people go like, oh, Atlanta did this, so I can do it. But it's like, but you're not Donald Glover. So so you have to do something a little bit differently.
It is important to understand the context, though, which is like Atlanta was not like a script just sent out from some unknown writer.
Exactly.
It was from this dude who made music and was in this NBC show. Like, that was part of the pitch.
Yes.
And he had to lie to FX execs to get that.
That's right.
And so sometimes it is going to come down to more than the script. Sometimes the script comes later in the process of making a show. Sometimes it's just a spec, and that's what sells. So the context of that will also be important to the question.
That makes sense.
Not to give you a non-answer, but
no, it is. No, it's an answer. It's a real answer, because like a lot of dramedies in particular, like there's a big star behind most.
There's
dramedies.
A singular voice, like
yeah. If you like break all the dramedies down, you're like, oh, okay, yep. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, okay, yep. It just goes on and on and on. Let's see. We were curious, like, what are you guys into right now in terms of what are you watching? What has sparked with you? We talked about The Rehearsal a little bit. Like, what's your favorite stuff going on right now?
You know, I am always underprepared for this question.
Everyone is.
You know, I remember, you know, sometimes when I go into things, I like have to write down, like, what are my favorite shows? Who are my favorite directors? Because sometimes it's just so oversaturated. But I'm really a populist. I think I try to watch everything. You really have to be as informed as possible, and when you're on the side of the industry that Mitchell and myself are in. But, you know, in terms of newer stuff, you know, The Rehearsal and The Bear, I really love. You know, I try to always look kind of globally as well. There's this comedy Bloods with Samson Kayo that I'm really into. I think it's wonderful. And, you know, I don't know. I think there's been I think I'm leaning a little bit more in the comedy space ever since Pachinko and Severance. I've been looking for kind of something
Mhm.
something to really hook me on the hour-long side. But things like Our Flag Means Death,
Yeah.
Flatbush Misdemeanors, Sex
Yeah.
Education, I think
Yeah.
all of those have kind of caught me in some ways in the last couple months.
Yeah, I would say all of that. I watched over the weekend. I mentioned Not Okay, which I loved.
Uh-huh.
Watched Bullet Train, which I thought was a really fun film.
Oh, nice.
Craig of the Creek, Cartoon Network, HBO Max.
Uh-huh.
Highly, highly recommend.
Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful children's animated show. Haven't seen the new season, but I'm very excited to when I have the time. Primal, which is a Gammy Tarkovsky. It's it's an adult animated series with no dialogue. It's crazy. Scripts must be wild for that.
They
one.
must be.
Yeah.
We should get a hold of one of those.
And trying to think what else. I mean, yeah, unfortunately, I think Tom kind of alluded to this. To be the best exec possible, you kind of have to be like a pilot watcher, like the first hour of a movie watcher, where you're just like, you need to watch a little bit of everything so you can talk about everything, because you can't be that person who didn't check out that show, but then you never finish anything. So a never-ending list.
But it's funny, you sometimes end up getting guided by what you love, like to this day, like I watched X-Files like decades ago, but I'm just deep down, I'm like, one of these days I'm gonna make an X-Files, and like I'm like, oh, one of these days I'm gonna make my version of Field of Dreams, whatever that is. Sometimes you kind of are guided by what you were passionate about, earlier on, but there's some new stuff that I would love to make a Pachinko. I would love to figure out how to even do that, but.
Emily and I wanted to know, what did you learn from working for Scott Rudin, if you can tell us anything?
I'm assuming that's just me, Mitchell.
Unless Mitchell's a secret Rudinite.
I mean, I've taken his calls. I don't know the man.
It's I always say I think I caught him out of his prime. Just in general, I mean that in many different ways. And so I think others have had it tougher than I've had it, but I'll just stay on the more, obviously there's already enough out there that I think there's, enough has been said. But if there are a couple of takeaways that I could really get, is that to this day, he is still the most well-read person I have ever met in my entire life. He is someone who can demand 100, 110-hour work weeks because he's working 120, 130.
Wow.
Man never sleeps. And so I'm not saying that is necessary.
Right.
I'm not saying I condone any of the way he conducts his business and how he's conducted everything. But it did really prove to me that, there's a reason he can give a good meeting with writers. There's a reason he can give a good meeting with creatives, is because if he's going into a meeting, he is reading and familiarizing himself with literally every single thing they have done. Wow. And it's not just to make them feel special or anything. It's so that he feels prepared, and everything. So I don't know if that was kind of the optimistic, positive spin you were looking for.
we were thinking like whatever you would give us, and then, something on a craft level, in terms of as an executive. But I think your point is well made, that it's like he's the most well-informed person when it comes to the content that's flowing through the business, right? And he's reading it himself, right? It's not like his interns are reading it and he's reading coverage or something like that.
He won't let interns or assistants touch anything, and if you offer him feedback, he doesn't care because he has to read it himself. And I think that's something. It was frustrating when I first started out.
That'd be tough. Emily, did you have some questions?
Let's see. I want to look at some of the audience questions.
We covered a lot of them, but there are a few.
I saw a question a bit ago that said, oh yeah, have you ever read a script that you didn't think at first would have an easily identifiable market, but you ended up championing it because it was just so good? And could you tell us a little bit about that, if you've had an experience like that?
Easily identifiable market.
Like, for example, one that comes to mind for me is I was reading this script for this competition, actually, that is a musical about Elvis. And it's also like Christmas is deeply involved. And I thought to myself, this is like a hat on a hat on a hat. I don't know what to do with this when I was beginning to read it. But then as I read it, I was like, every time I turned the page, I was like, this is really good. I didn't want to like this so much, but it's really good.
Once again, I think I come up about it as a very cynical perspective. Like, I only have my own tastes, and I obviously am not the arbiter of all taste. And so I think I try to approach every script with a pretty open mind. And certainly I've championed shows that, I think would resonate with maybe other pockets and other segments of viewers of TV, because I'm not the only viewer that I am kind of approaching. And it kind of comes back to all the fundamental tenets, like even shows that are considered broad or commercial compared to shows that are considered prestige. I hate all of these words, but across the spectrum, it really does matter. Like, there are some through lines when it comes to character and relationships and world and universe. And I think no matter what, there's, especially as I've kind of worked, across the gamut of that spectrum across commercial and broad and prestige and indie, like I've developed across that entire spectrum, and you end up kind of approaching it in very similar ways. The delivery is different, but you still have to know everything about your characters. You have to know everything about your world, especially if it's a high concept world. And I think sometimes, if there are multiple touch points, like the example you mentioned, like that could work to your advantage. And then sometimes it could also be a bit of a hot mess and you want to be a little bit more focused. And so that's a non-answer, but that came from the heart.
Good. Appreciate that.
That was the best answer yet. I to add to that, I think that there's a movie coming out where Shawn Mendes plays an alligator.
No way.
Yeah, it's like anything's possible.
Yeah.
you can do anything. And if Zendaya wants to attach herself to this, like, it'll get made.
Right.
And so it's all about a lot of these different intersections having to happen. And so what Tom was saying is, like, you gotta, if you're gonna work in this industry, you kind of have to come at it with an open mind. And you have to be able to, I mean, this is more applicable to sellers than to buyers, but you're going to need to learn how to pitch. And sometimes you're going to pitch things that are a little bit trickier. There's this feature I'm taking out about a teenage girl that punches penises. And it's a little bit of a hard sell off the bat, right? Here's
another one of those, Mitchell.
Another one of those.
God, if I had a quarter.
Same story, just keeps getting told. And
then a punch a penis. Yeah.
It's just about it's about establishing. It's about creating your hook, and that's what writers I think have to do. I think that's what any, like, directors, actors, whoever, especially reps and executives on the selling side, or buyers to their bosses, is you have to create a compelling hook, but not lie through your teeth, like actually mean it and prove that it has a commercial component, because there's so many movies that have been made for a lot of money that have not done well, obviously. And there are so many movies that have not been made that if they were, would probably make a lot of money if the marketing and all of these things kind of concurrently worked as well. So it all just depends.
Love it. Sort of along those lines, somebody else asked if to what extent would you consider a script that has noticeable flaws, but you can really see the potential of what it could be? Like, Mitchell, if you're thinking of like the writer's voice, are you still interested maybe in taking a meeting? Or Tom, if you're interested in like helping them develop it and work out those flaws, or is that sort of a no-go for you? Do you like to see a perfect script?
This is where Tom and I probably have very different answers, because I think the bar is going to be very different for me. Tom's a development production exec. I'm like a pre-development exec. And so for me, it's about finding that potential and finding that voice. I can give notes on an ending. I can give notes on character beats. I can give notes on structure, but I can't give notes on voice. I don't know how to tell a comedy writer how to be funnier. I don't know how to tell a horror writer to be scarier. You got to have that. You got to have that potential in your writing. And if that's there, then I can use my industry experience to try and give the notes needed to make this the best possible version of itself. But, if you're working at a place where it's just, you don't have enough time and you're covering a lot of projects and you can't go through 6, 7, 8 rewrites, that's a luxury I can live with because that's the job I chose. But especially once you're, a studio exec, a production company exec, creative exec, work at a network, whatever, the bar is going to be a lot higher, which is why hopefully you have management that or friends out there that can help you get your material to the best place before those people see it.
Speaking of which, we did get a question about, like, other than competitions, how can a writer get read, without representation? What are some avenues to that?
Twitter. I'm not
That
kidding.
sounds
No,
awesome.
I know.
I
Yeah,
talk-
no,
Yeah. Social media, use it to your advantage. Literally, yeah.
And I think, it's interesting. We're actually in the middle of having a lot of internal conversations about like how we can find some of these people, especially unrepped folks. And it's, to a certain extent, a lot of it is on us too to be looking at these places. I think, I think Mitchell does an incredible. I think Mitchell, you once, told me about a client of yours that you just like, this was like a car commercial that they made that I thought was an undeniable talent. And that's how you came across someone. And like, I saw it and I was like, holy shit, you're right. It's just like sometimes it's on us to be looking in the right places as well. But, there really are a good amount of, not every competition and festival necessarily have, exclusionary fees and things of that nature. If there's some financial considerations, which is something that we're always thinking about. But yeah, I have come across, things that have just viral short films that come out of nothing but social media. I have kind of been attuned to that. Sometimes, I don't always look to the big screen. I'm always just scouring a little elsewhere, and whether it is kind of alternate form too, because we try to really find folks from kind of non-traditional talent pools beyond just film and TV, whether it is playwriting, whether it's short stories and IP-based stuff, whether it's novelists, musicians that have interesting voices. I think there's a lot of ways to get noticed, and that's kind of much easier said than done, obviously. But I think there are avenues, and really look for what is specifically kind of going to get it out there to the right audience that you're aiming for, because that's really what's going to propel you. You don't want to make something that you think everyone will love, because then no one specifically will love it. And so find your tribe and find your community and make sure it gets it out there.
Because we're living in a very niche kind of world right now, right? Everything's hyper specific, and we're going into like subcultures and exploring those things. It seems like, especially for like online content. Do you guys look at Reddit and stuff like that for material and articles and those kinds of things?
Sure.
I think so, yeah. The dark annals of YouTube sometimes.
Yeah.
I certainly do. I've reached out to people with my YouTube account before. So it's out
The
there.
internet could be a wonderful place.
It can be.
It's a tool belt.
What's your guys' take on querying in general, and is it helpful? Is it something people should be spending a lot of time on? And what should people have in their portfolio to do so, or even just talk to anyone who's a rep or an exec?
I'm going to defer to you on this one. I feel like this is a little bit more your space.
You can be honest, because I think it's good to
I'm always honest.
just
You're not
rip
worried
it.
about that.
Yeah.
My answer is not going to stop anyone from querying me.
Right.
So what I will say is, if you are going to do that, short, sweet, make it personalized. Don't be to whom it may concern or whatever. Like, find ways to, it's a cold open to the cold open. Hook me in.
Connect,
it's a log
right?
line to your log line.
Right.
Reel me in, attract me, entice me, give me a reason to respond that is short and sweet and lets me take no more than 10 seconds out of my day.
And just, I think I had more latitude when I was working at smaller companies before. But also keep in mind, I think that there are so many lawyers and business affairs people that insist I can absolutely not review anything that is kind of unsolicited sometimes. And so keep in mind who you're querying, I think, is kind of also something you don't always aim for, I want to make a movie with A24, so I will exclusively email people at A24. Like, that's not the approach, It's like finding people who are receptive and open, and looking for that might be a greater ally sometimes than the optimal destination of where you want it. It's a dream destination.
That makes sense. And then follow up to that, they wanted to know what makes an ideal client in terms of what they bring to a manager, what level of experience. Yeah.
What level of experience is like gets a rep's interest?
Yeah. What's an ideal client for someone who would get interest from a rep?
I don't know, if you've ran the room for a couple of shows, like, like that's usually pretty I would say that, I mean, look, it's, when you're a rep, you want ammo, right? You want to be able to use things to sell to wonderful execs like Tom and prove to them why you're not like these other reps, and the writers you rep aren't like these other writers. How you've got the holy grail of a roster. How you've got someone different that stands out. So you're gonna have something that helps you stand out. In a conventional sense, that's credits. In an unconventional sense, it can be something else, right? It can be voice, it can be an undeniable script or a short or a reel or whatever. But you have to know what your rep is going to be used to pitch you. So if you know that beforehand, if you know how to pitch yourself and you know how to highlight yourself in an articulate and comprehensive and concise way, it'll make it that much easier for the rep to be like, oh, these are good highlights. These are good bullet points. I'm going to use this to sell you to Tom or whoever. Right.
That's really good advice. Do you guys, beyond our competition, like, what do you guys feel about what would you say, like, are the big competitions that people are, they're worth applying to for whatever reason? I'm personally not like a big competition fan because it feels like there's so many, but like ours is so different. Like, we actually are helping you before you've even gotten a score. And so, it's a little bit different, but, the nickel and, AFF and all those sorts of things, are they worth, sending your script to?
I think the big ones certainly are, because those are the types of things that, suddenly you could add it to your kind of arsenal of reasons to pay attention to, whether it's the nickel or it's the blacklist. And so I think some of the big ones are probably good to get out there. But like you mentioned, I think always keep in mind who it's eventually going to go to, when you're submitting scripts, and especially if there's a high registration fee and all, the only people that are going to read it are just purely judges and not, folks that are kind of going to be able to read it and convert it into something. I think those are the ones you want to ideally target. Like this roadmap, for example, I feel like there are a lot of folks like Mitchell and myself that are, the reason we're doing this and we're kind of giving time to this is because we are looking for kind of newer talent and newer voices and really looking for, this exact material. And so, unfortunately, I'm sure there are some competitions out there that are less helpful or just don't serve the writers and talent in the way that they should. So I would just always kind of keep a close eye in terms of who's going to actually be reading these and what will it mean if it actually, place or something like that. But
that's a beautiful answer. And the only thing I would say is Tom and I might have our own opinions, but we're not applying to these programs. And we're not going to know internally what these programs are like. And that's why it's really, really crucial for so many reasons. But to answer this question specifically, that you have relationships with other writers that have done other programs, that know what these other programs are like. Because maybe some fellowships offer like a blind script deal, others like consistently give you meetings with executives from that place or whatever, like talking to other writers, getting their off of Twitter, whatever, like just talking to people being like, hey, what do you think about this? That's where it's going to be really important for you to not be wasting your time and money, because there are a lot of programs that don't really do anything. And there are a lot of programs that can do actually a lot. And, you know, as executives, we can kind of have our finger on the pulse, but we will never know as well as people who have actually applied and been in or won those programs.
Do you guys track those, or do your assistants track like who's winning this or who got into this fellowship or anything like that?
I mean, yeah, for sure. I personally do. So yes, no question.
Yeah.
We'll always look. Yeah, we'll always kind of, you know, whether it's on deadline or something, you know, it's always good to be in the know.
Right. Emily, any other questions that you're seeing that you like?
Most of them have been answered. If anyone wants to send in a last minute question, now would be the time. If we haven't answered anything, you can go ahead and put it in the chat. But I'm scrolling through and I feel like we've answered a lot of these.
Because, you know, a lot of people are asking me, like, are there any genres that are off limits or genres that are preferred and that kind of thing? But does that come into play for you guys at all? The genre is saturated, or?
I always, you know, at least on my side of the industry as a seller, there are often so many buyer mandates and things like that, especially in the TV space. And I'm going to be honest, I always take that with a grain of salt because things change on a dime. And, you know, one exec could say, I'm looking for supernatural grounded genre right now. And maybe 3 weeks later, they found that script and they've moved on. And so, you know, I think there are naturally, you know, taste and preferences sometimes that factor into play, but I usually always like to take as open of a mind. You know, sometimes, unfortunately, if something overlaps with something we're already working on, that is just the matter of, you know, that's just how things are sometimes. But I like to really kind of not isolate by genre unless we're incredibly oversaturated in terms of our studio slate.
Interesting.
I agree with that. I think an open mind is really important, but it's also nice to have kind of those production sensibilities and be like, okay, cool. If this is period, if this takes place in the 1600s, this might be a little bit more expensive due to costume design reasons, production design reasons, etc. And that might make it a harder sell. You know,
right?
Like that is something that kind of, regardless of mandate, unless something radically shifts, is just kind of something good to know. And then another thing, and this is why having your finger on the pulse and kind of just like watching things and talking to people and just being social is important. Like knowing from your friends what they're looking for. Like what are they looking to view? It does seem like a lot of people are looking for things that feel like they have like a, maybe not necessarily aspirational, because I don't think that's the right word. Because what was the biggest show of last year? It was a show about competition where you really,
right.
You know, like it's not, that doesn't necessarily scream aspirational to me, but it does scream really fun.
Right.
And it screams really high energy and like
right.
entertaining and fast.
Yeah.
And maybe people aren't as in the mood for those like slower, sadder, depressing kind of things.
Sad coms, as some people have called them.
Yeah, like certain dramedies will always kind of do well, but even that certain buyers are steering clear of.
Yeah.
So something that feels loud and energetic while still kind of having some kind of, you know, grounded element to it will probably do well currently in the marketplace as people are coping with these things that are happening in our midst.
Because we have Ted Lasso and we have Squid Games and we have Yellow Jackets and we have Severance, and there are these things that are incredibly bleak and then things that are incredibly hopeful, right, happening at the same time.
But even like that's the thing, right? Like Squid Game and Severance is really funny. Squid Game is really fast paced.
Yeah.
And so it's about making a fun experience, a fun viewing experience, because the bar is so high. Kind of like what I was saying, like there's something good that comes out every week. We're no longer past the point where it's like, oh, when's the next good show going to come out? It's about what's going to move to the top of your list now.
Right.
And by that, you need something that's energizing and need something that gets you, you know, to actually want to watch it. And that can be about the end of the world. It can be post-apocalyptic. It
like
can even
Station
be
11.
But like, it's got to be something that'll keep you entertained.
That's awesome. I think that's it. We're at 12:33. Want to let our guys get back to discovering new talent or eating a sandwich. Thank you guys for spending your middle of the day with us. I know you guys are busy.
Yeah, thank
And
you so much.
it was awesome. You guys like crushed the shit out of this. So it was really cool. Like you answered so many questions. And everyone, thank you for your questions. And Emily, do you have any parting thoughts for the competition folks? And
not really. I'm checking really quick. Just, I'm so excited to read all of your scripts, and I know the judges are too. And I really just want to thank you guys, everyone who attended, for your time, especially Tom and Mitchell. We really appreciate it.
yeah.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Thank you both. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys. We'll see you later.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.